Mr Murray, hello.
Morning.
Labour has just unveiled a 5-point plan that's come out this morning to tackle the mortgage crisis. I'm just going to take our viewers through it and then we'll discuss it. The plans would include requiring banks to allow borrowers to switch to interest-only repayments. Borrowers will be able to increase their mortgage length. Borrowers can undo both of those actions as and when. Banks should allow 6 months before they can start a repossession. And the Financial Conduct Authority is to advise that credit ratings should be unaffected by these changes. All sounds good. However, some people will read those points and go, a lot of that's available to people already if they just pick up the phone to their bank.
Well, look, we know that some banks are doing the right thing and helping their customers, but some people are also falling through the cracks, and people need the confidence that they can pick up the phone to their bank and get that support, and that their credit rating won't be affected if they take those measures. And, you know, look, right across the country, people are really worried by what's happening with mortgage rates. You know, we know that this year already 700,000 people have had to remortgage. By the end of the year, another 700,000 people will have remortgaged. And the people who are affected by mortgage rate rises are people who have saved for a deposit, they've done the right thing, they've bought a house, they're going to work, they're paying their mortgage payments, and they're getting clobbered through no fault of their own. So that's why we set out this 5-point plan, so that working people don't have to face the Tory economic crisis alone.
Yeah, repossessions have gone up 50% in the first 3 months of this year. You know, this is real for people who own homes. Renters, of course, are being affected by those who own the homes they live in as well. This is a short-term fix in terms of you want to force lenders to act responsibly, and that's the right thing to do. But what is the longer-term plan? Because we're talking about continuing interest rate rises. We're going to get another one today. Could go up as high as 5%, some people are predicting. And inflation is stubborn, it's sticky, it's stuck at over 8%. What's the longer-term plan from Labour to tackle this?
Well, look, you're absolutely right to say that what we're proposing is a temporary, targeted set of measures to help people right now with the mortgage rate rises that they're facing. But, you know, the scale of the Tories' economic failure is huge. You know, this is going to be with us for some time under the Conservatives. And what we would do if we were in government is make sure that we bring back stability to the economy by making sure that we are economically responsible. We would make sure that we are increasing our economic security, including by boosting energy security, and we'd get the economy growing by having good jobs around the whole of the UK.
Yeah, it would be a big task to take on if you were to form the next government. And just in light of what looks like increasing tensions between the government and the Bank of England this morning, you know, you've got a cabinet member on Sky News last night hinting that the Bank of England should have seen this coming because the Prime Minister's Chancellor did. Would you change the government's relationship with the Bank of England? Would that change if Labour were in power? Would you bring the decision-making for things like interest rates back under government control? Because the government at the moment are having to watch on and they can't interfere with what the Bank of England are doing. And people are saying what they're doing with interest rates is not working.
Well, no, look, we respect the Bank of England's independence. We would always respect that independence. We think they should be allowed to get on with their job. And frankly, I think government ministers, rather than I think government ministers, rather than coming on and criticising the Bank of England, they should focus on doing their job properly, which is to make sure the economy is stable and secure, and make sure they are managing the economy responsibly and getting economic growth up. You know, that's what government ministers should be focused on.
There are ex-Bank of England chiefs today saying that we should go into a recession to tackle inflation. I mean, we're looking now at the best, worst option to try and tackle what's going on. Would creating a recession and paying for millions really be the only way out of this crisis?
Well, look, I don't accept that. You know, I think what the government should be doing is focusing on getting the economy stable, getting the economy more secure, getting the economy growing again. You know, and really the government needs to take responsibility for the economic mess that they've created after 13 years.
Let's talk about windfall tax. Labour have been very vocal about windfall tax on energy companies, energy prices, you know, coming down, so that might well fall by the wayside. Would you support in this current crisis a windfall tax on banks? Because they're the ones benefiting from this crisis. They're getting more money from borrowers. They're not passing that on to savers. So essentially, they're profiting from this crisis. So would Labour echo what you targeted energy companies for with the banks?
Well, look, that's not our plan. But what we're saying is that if banks are making more money, that should be passed on to savers, because savers who have done the right thing, put away some money, they should be reflected with better interest rates on their savings. And actually, the government and the regulator should be watching, what banks are doing to make sure that that is being passed on correctly. But what we think banks should do to help mortgage payers is the 5-point plan we set out, which is about that temporary targeted help for people now.
In terms of that plan you've got, it does push the problem a little bit further down the road, because people are still going to have to pay these high interest rates at some point. It just puts it off. It puts it off over a longer period of time. They can take a pause in it. They're still going to have to pay these high interest rates. Do we need something more radical here? Because the traditional tools, your 5-point plan, the interest rate rises are not working. Are we looking at something like a windfall tax? Are we looking at something like, for a temporary period, maybe longer, depending on how long this goes on for, taking the interest rate out of mortgage repayments for a time? Why is it that banks should be profiting off this?
Well, look, I think the danger with having sort of large, untargeted, expensive measures is that risks stoking inflation further. So we don't think that's the right thing to do. What we think the right thing to do is to have a targeted, temporary measure to help people through the immediate crisis they're facing in terms of their interest payments going up so much. And the way that we set out our 5-point plan means that, yes, people would pay more in the longer run, but that actually means that people will not take that decision lightly to go to interest only or to extend their mortgage repayment period, which means that it will be targeted on those people who need help most. So the help for those people who are most affected will be huge, but the effect overall on the economy will be small. And so that's really important to make sure that we try and get through this effectively. Just
a final question. The government seemed to be determined, two of their pledges was to halve inflation and for growth. And it seems in this current climate that you can't get both. Do you believe you can? Do you believe you can promote growth and halve inflation?
Well, look, the government have had low growth. Well, the government have had low growth for the last 13 years. They've had, half a dozen or more growth plans, and none of which have had any positive impact in terms of getting growth up to where it should be. What we set out is how we would grow the economy, how we would make sure we have economic responsibility, economic security, energy security as well. And that's the way out of this crisis in the long run, to get the economy growing in a secure, robust way.
Gosh, what a task ahead. Are you sure you want it?
Absolutely.
OK, James Murray, Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury. Really appreciate your time here on Breakfast this morning. Thank you.